Hi everybody, this is Laura, City Scrapper. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I have a Shimmerz Paints layout for you. In order to make this layout, I use the Shimmerz color kits from September, and I'm starting off with a mixed media background. Initially, I was going to have pattern paper on half of the layout and then do some mixed media on the other half. I do end up changing that plan, but I do keep the mixed media that I'm adding to the layout right now. So I started off with a piece of gessoed smooth white cardstock. It's 120-pound cardstock. I'm using some modeling paste, and I am using my palette knife to push it through this stencil. This is a sunburst stencil. I believe it's from Anthology. I really love sunbursts. I use them on a lot of my layouts lately, and I like this stencil for this layout, but unfortunately it was a little smaller than I wanted it to be. I wanted the sunburst design to go pretty much from edge to edge, but in the beginning I was trying to make do with the stencil as it was. So I took the palette knife and I scraped away some of the modeling paste to give the stenciled area an irregular edge. And then I used my heat tool to dry up the modeling paste because I decided that I wanted to extend those lines. So by drying the modeling paste, I won't ruin what I've already put down with the new layer of stenciling I'm going to do. So you can see that I just moved the stencil over to the edge, and I'm trying to match up the lines so that the lines that are already there look extended. Because this is kind of a rustic looking sunburst, I didn't have to be too precise. And in the end, I don't think that you could tell that the lines were extended. I continued to add more modeling paste until the whole left side of the layout was covered with these starburst rays. And then once I had completed the modeling paste, I used my heat tool and I dried the entire background thoroughly. And now I'm going to add some color to the modeling paste. So I started off with a color splash spray. The color of this one is Squeeze the Day. I put a little bit of paint on a piece of plastic, and then I added some water, and then I'm using the packaging technique to spread that color all over my background. The color splash sprays are acrylic sprays, and I didn't realize how versatile they would be when I first got them. I found that I can use them watered down on layouts like this in the same way that I would use watercolor sprays. I also use them a lot on my gel plate, which I've been having a lot of fun with in the past few months. I wanted to add another orangey color to my sunburst, so I picked out this color. It's a Shimmerz called Marigold, and I'm once again using the packaging technique. I'm putting a little bit of it on a piece of plastic and adding some water to help to move it around the background. Because of the modeling paste, this background is very textured, so I had to add a little bit more water than I normally would to help the paint move around. I'm still thinking at this point that I'm going to be putting a piece of pattern paper on the right-hand side of the layout. This is going to change soon, but right now I am continuing to work with that thought in mind. After I use the packaging technique to spread the color around, I wanted to add some splatters. So I used a little bit of paint with a lot of water and a small paintbrush, and I splatter the color all over the background. I always like to add splatters. It just gives the mixed media such a cool feel. I like that random look. I'm also adding some of the color splash spray that I used earlier to have the splatters in both of the colors. After I added the yellow and orange splatters, I was thinking maybe I should add some blue splatters just to add a different color to the background, and I didn't like this at all. I just added a couple, and then I used paper towel and I lifted some of them up. I wasn't sure that I should lift all of them up at this point, but by the end of the layout, you can't see any of those blue splatters. I covered them up in different ways. And the color is a beautiful color of teal. It's a Creameez called Boogie Boardin blue, but I just didn't think it was right for the sunburst. In the bottle, I have some watered down white acrylic paint. I use that to splatter all over the background randomly, but I also use the little straw and I dab them on the blue dots to help to cover them up. Now I have changed my plan and I'm going to have the background covered with this large sunburst. Well, it's going to be very large by the time I'm done, and I'm not going to have pattern paper on half of the layout. So I again used my stencil and I extended all of those lines, and I used the exact same colors and the exact same method to add color to the new area of modeling paste. I once again watered down some of the color splash and some of the shimmers, and I splattered the entire background with a small paintbrush, and then I added some more white splatters to the entire background as well. Since the watered down white acrylic paint splatters take quite a while to dry, once I was done with the splatters, I put the entire layout off to the side, and then I began working on the rest of my layout. I'm going to use a piece of cardstock that was in my stash to assemble all of the elements of this layout. The striped paper is one from the kit. I am using a strip of that paper on the left-hand side and across the top. I wanted to bring some of the colors of the layout to the background, and since I ended up not using any other pattern paper, I thought that this very colorful striped paper would achieve that look. I cut one of the strips of paper on a 45-degree angle in one of the corners. That way I would have a little frame look to these two strips of paper, and that allowed me to have the stripes going up and down on the top of the layout and then side to side on the side of the layout. Now I'm layering my background on top of the pattern paper and also the cardstock. I trimmed the background down a little bit, and then once I attached it down to the piece of cardstock, I trimmed it down just a little bit more. I'm going to be using a photo of both of my daughters. I have this photo mounted on some white cardstock, and then I mounted again on a piece of green cardstock from my stash. This is actually a scrap paper I got from one of my scrap envelopes. I'm using a distress tool so that the edges will look a little less neat, a little more roughed up. And then in addition to using the distress tool, I like to bend in some of the paper in a couple of areas to make it look even more distressed. When I first started scrapbooking, I wanted everything to look very clean and tidy. I wanted all the edges and all the lines to be straight and clean. And now I really enjoy the distressed look. I really like the look that it adds to layouts. I only do a little distressing on this page, but I think that even a little bit adds something. These flowers that I'm using now are just absolutely gorgeous. I fussy cut them from some of the papers from the September kit. I absolutely loved these pattern papers. They had these really large images, very colorful, a lot of them floral, and I just really loved working with them. And I loved this big flower with this huge kind of tropical looking leaf. I just really like that, and I think it kind of made the whole layout. Well, I have one large cluster of flowers, and then I layered that other flower with the leaf attached to it to the left of that, and then I tucked my photo behind all of the flowers. I use ATG adhesive to attach all of those elements down to the page. To have some balance on the layout, I decided to put another smaller cluster in the upper left-hand corner. So far, everything that I've used on the layout has been fussy cut from the pattern papers, and there were just so many beautiful images of flowers, so I tried to make the most of that in creating my layouts for September. I use another type of tropical leaf. I have the big pink flower and that smaller kind of pinkish rose colored flower. I layer those on top of each other. I also include another smaller leaf that's a little bit more on the blue side, and then I was happy with that, and I began to attach those elements down to the page. I wasn't really sure if the ATG adhesive would be enough to hold the elements down to the page because I had so much modeling paste on the background, but everything ended up staying in place, and the ATG adhesive was absolutely fine to use on this layout. On the page of cut aparts, there was this really cute lantern, so I fussy cut that out, and then I placed that to the right of my photo. I thought I needed something other than just florals on the page, and I thought that this was a nice addition and that it fit in that spot really well. There was also a bright pink heart that I thought would look nice in that small cluster that's kind of within the larger cluster. I'm also using one of the dots from the kit. This one says "Life is Sweet," and that's going to serve as my title. And then I decided the edge of the photo wasn't quite distressed enough, so I added a few more folds to that cardstock. And then I moved over the cluster on the top. I like the way those flowers and that whole cluster looked directly in the corner of the layout. I wasn't totally in love with the way I had arranged the elements in the cluster, so I decided to start switching them around and moving them around and seeing if I could find a better composition. I also wanted to add some butterflies to the layout. These were also fussy cut from one of the pattern papers. And then all of these leaves that I'm putting on top of the photo, these are all from the cut apart sheet. I love adding butterflies to layouts. I just think they add such a nice touch. So I was really happy that there were a variety of different colors that were in the pattern papers. And then there were also some butterflies in the cut apart sheet, and I do include one of those butterflies on the layout in a little while. I'm again inking the edges of all of those with the Distress Oxide in Vintage Photo to help them stand out a little bit. My next step with butterflies is usually to give them a little bit of dimension. I like to use fun foam to do that. And I put a little bit of foam on the wings, and then I put some adhesive not only on the foam but in the center of the butterfly, and then pressing down on the center of the butterfly helps the wings to pop up a little bit. And I'm sorry if you watch my channel a lot, I talk about that all the time, but it works for me, and like I said, I love to have butterflies, and I really like when there's dimension too. I wanted to add some photo corners because I usually add photo corners to my layouts. And I love the way there was a piece from the cut apart sheet that had a very, very tiny pattern on it. I thought that that was kind of missing from the layout. Everything was on a large scale. I wanted to include something that was a little bit smaller. So I added those photo corners. And I've been doing a lot of organizing lately. I transferred some embellishments that I had from a bag to a jar, and one of them must have fallen out. I found it on my table and I decided to add it to the center of the heart. It's just a little clear dot. I used some glossy accents to attach that down, and I'm glad that one little dot escaped. I don't know that I would have thought to use it if I didn't find it on my table. I added a leaf to the lower right-hand corner to kind of round out that cluster, and then I trimmed some of the excess off of the edges, and then I wanted to add some jewels to the layout. For the photo corners, I used a black jewel, and then I attached that down with the glossy accents as well. I find glossy accents is great for things like jewels and sequins. It really holds them in place. I use a pink jewel in the center of the pink flower that's toward the top of the layout. And then I once again use the black jewels and the glossy accents to put some jewels down the centers of each of those butterflies. I'm not exactly sure where I got these jewels from, but they're very sparkly and I really like them. I didn't want to add another bright color to the layout, so I thought that some touches of black would be a good choice. I used a variety of different sizes to go with the sizes of the butterflies. And then that is the very last touch that I add to this layout. This layout is complete, and here are some close-ups. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. I was having a little bit of trouble getting my videos up on my channel. I had a problem with my computer reading my external hard drive, but everything seems to be working now, and so I hope to have a number of videos up on my channel soon. When you place an order with Shimmerz Paints, please use my name in the description box and you will receive a free gift. There's a link to the Shimmerz website and also to the color kits in the description box. I hope you'll check them out. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.